Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about managing our different fitness goals into bite-sized chunks and why we have to do that sometimes. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and talk about this. So I'm going to sit here and make happy little bullets with my Bob Ross voice. Alright, managing our goals in bite-sized chunks. Why does this matter? Because most of us aren't noobs anymore. In fact, if you're watching YouTube fitness channels at all, you probably have at least 6 months to a year of lifting, managing your diet, things like that. You've probably been at this a little while. When we first start out, everything comes easy. It's actually possible to achieve 5 or 6 different goals concurrently with no problem, because your body is new to adapting. You haven't gained muscle or strength before through training. All of this is new stimulus. When people first start out, what happens? If you're 30 or 40 pounds overweight, you start lifting and managing your diet, what happens if you get on a good program? People who've run some of my programs, what happens? Your strength goes up rapidly. You lose weight every week. Like tons of people who are relatively overweight, they need to lose at least 30 pounds or more to be healthy. They start lifting, they go on a good program, they end up losing a pound every single week just managing their diet. And their strength goes up. Their strength and muscle mass goes up as high as someone who's on a hardcore bulk, who's bulking and trying to gain weight usually, if they follow a structured program. Sometimes in that first 6 months they add 100 pounds to their squat, 150 pounds to their deadlift, bench press goes up, arms get bigger, while they lose 20 or 25 pounds of body weight. Right? That's what happens for people who are really sedentary and obese and they come in the gym. Same thing, the skinny guy starts out. He comes into the gym, the really skinny guy, the 140 pound guy, he ups his carbs way up, increases his protein, goes on a good training program. What happens? He gains solid muscle. In fact, he looks in the mirror sometimes, he gains that first 15 pounds, that first 10 pounds, and goes, I'm up 10 pounds, but I look leaner. What the hell happened? He almost recompositions a little bit, a lot of the skinny undereater. He seems to lose a little bit of muscle. Everything gets bigger. All his lifts go up, biceps get bigger, chest gets bigger, legs get bigger, waist sometimes gets smaller. Everything improves. But the reality is, the more advanced you get, the more you're going to find that you can't obtain multiple different goals concurrently. It becomes more difficult, and we've got to reel those things in. Now, there's a reason training periodization is done in 3-week blocks. It's the stuff exercise physiologists have determined years ago. It oftentimes takes your body about 3 weeks to adapt to anything, to a new stimulus. About 3 weeks, as long as it's not a major change in stimulus. What do we know from habits? Like studies on research that psychologists show that you oftentimes habit patterns work in a 21-day cycle, about 3 weeks. If you do something for 3 weeks straight, you can turn it into a habit, whether it's a good habit or a bad habit. We know that even your taste buds, when people change diets, it takes about 3 days for your taste buds to change. Meaning, we're so used to eating so much really sweet stuff with massive amounts of hyperpalatable foods, artificial sweeteners, refined sugars and everything, that foods don't taste sweet to us. But if someone cuts all of those sweeteners out for about 3 weeks, what happens? Unsweetened foods actually taste a little sweeter, because even your taste buds seem to work on a 3-week cycle. So what I recommend to most people, you know what, once you're at that beginning phase in your fitness goals, you really don't ever need to make more than one change every 3 weeks. If you change something, don't change 2 or 3 things very quickly. If you need to change something in your training towards a new goal, don't make more than one change every 3 weeks. And there are times when you're going to have to sit back and stagnate a little bit on other goals so that you can break each thing you're doing off into bite-sized chunks. In other words, don't change a new focus more than once every 3 weeks. So what do I mean by that? Well, what if a person says, hey, I need to improve my endurance. I need to improve my, not even extreme endurance, mid-range endurance. I want to get better at running a 5K. Well, you start working towards running on your 5K, what happens to a lot of your other stuff? Your squats go down. Maybe your deadlift goes down. Your fatigue mounts up. You struggle to adapt to this new focus sometimes. And what happens when you add a new focus in, what do you have to do with everything else? You've got to do fatigue management for everything else that you're doing. And there are times when you've got to step back and say, okay, I want to improve my 5K run time. I have a weak body part I want to work on. I have a big lift I want to improve. There are times when you need to step back and look at everything that you're doing with your training and everything else and say, okay, can I let everything else, can I keep what I have everywhere else? Can I keep all these other performance elements, all this other muscle mass, all this other strength, and improve this one element? And when you do that, usually you've got to step back and be realistic. Where's my fatigue management? How much can my body handle and adapt to without too much mental stress, physical stress, my lifestyle? What goal is the most important for this block? And you focus on that. And you have to balance everything else and do just enough of the other stuff to maintain what you have. There are times when sometimes you might have to regress slightly on one thing because another thing becomes more important. But what happens when you have multiple different goals? You have to juggle those things around. What you're going to find is that when you focus on any one given thing for a 3-week block, a 6-week block, a 9-week block, that if you're smart and careful with your management of things, you can keep everything else you have and improve that one goal. And then you can do the same thing for another goal. And you sometimes have to do them sequentially. Because when you have far-reaching goals, you have a bunch of goals. I want to deadlift better. I want bigger biceps. I want to lose 2 inches off my waist. You want all these different things. You want to improve your squat. You want to improve your bench press. Sometimes you can't improve once you're advanced on multiple lifts, especially once you're relatively strong. You're going to find that sometimes you've got to put a little focus in for a little while on a weaker lift and let the other lifts sit, stay where they are. And sometimes that involves additional hypertrophy work for those weak points. And that's actually the same thing. Training on specializing a lift really isn't fundamentally different from someone with physique goals who has a weak body part they need to focus on. Why? Because it's a weakness. You're correcting usually a muscular weakness. Now, if you already know how to bench press and you've got a decent technique, do you really think you need more technique work on the bench press? That's probably not your weak link. Your weak link is you've got some weak muscles in there. You have lagging body parts that need to be brought up through additional work. That's no different than someone who is, say, training for physique goals and said, you know what, my delts need to come up, my biceps need to come up. Well, for your bench press or any other lift, it doesn't have to be a competitive lift. Sometimes you've got to step back and assess, well, the reason that lift isn't strong enough is I'm just not carrying enough muscle mass in 1 or 2 of the weak links in that lift. My weakest muscle in that lift isn't big enough. It needs a little more meat on it, and that lift will improve, right? That's not really any different from someone with a weak body part. So if you have something you need to bring up, you probably need to focus on it more. Does that mean you need to do more split training for it? No. It means you need to prioritize it in your training. And I'll give you guys a perfect example. Even though I've been cutting, I know that my weak link right now is my shoulder girdles. My delts need to come up. My biceps need to come up. So what do? I do a lot of chin-ups at home. Am I going to gain substantial muscle while cutting right now? No, but I'm going to keep my weakest links the most stimulated while I'm losing body fat. And then when I quit losing body fat, the focus will still be there, but it is something I started doing right before I went hard into this cut. I started focusing more on overhead pressing. So how do you focus on that? What am I doing with my whole shoulder girdle and overhead press? I do it first in every workout. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Sometimes to focus on a given goal, all you have to do is prioritize it in your training. And people have been doing that for decades and decades successfully. If you got a lagging body part or a lagging lift that you really know needs more attention than something else, do it first in every workout. Do it every time you work out. So again, split training is the opposite of what you need. I'm not saying you can't have an upper, lower, push, pull legs, whatever, but if you got something that's lagging, that needs to be done first. If your biceps are truly a lagging body part, you probably need to train your biceps at the start of every workout. You do it on your leg day, you do it on your chest day, or if you do push-pull legs, do it on each of those. If you do an upper-lower, you need to train biceps on your lower day too, don't you? You should probably do something for them first in every workout if they are truly lagging, because that's the point. Breaking stuff off into bite-sized chunks, fixing weaknesses, addressing goals that you need to reach. Well, same thing. When you're trying to lose body fat, do you really think you're going to significantly improve your bench press or your deadlift? Do you think you're significantly going to increase the size of your biceps when you're trying to drop 20 pounds of body weight? No. You've got to break these things off into bite-sized chunks. Now, you can adjust this and say, okay, I know that this lagging part body part is lagging the most, or this lift is lagging the most, I'm going to put extra focus on it while I'm cutting. And it might actually gain a very tiny amount of muscle, or at the very least it'll maintain better, because if you lose a little bit of muscle cutting, which does happen unfortunately, at least it won't be in the areas you put the most focus on. So that will help your balance, and that area will get stronger, and so when you do go back to gaining muscle, it will probably come up more quickly. But you have to accept that and say, that's part of it, breaking my stuff down into bite-sized chunks. I'm going to prime a future goal with the work I'm putting in now towards something, while putting the main focus on the most important goal. But you're going to be sadly disappointed when you come in and say, okay, I need to lose 10 pounds or 20 pounds of body fat, my biceps need to increase, and my deadlift needs to go up, and I need to improve my 5K run times. Well, best of luck with doing that all at once. We need to break these things off into little bite-sized chunks, at the very least, at least 3-week chunks and blocks, so that we can put the focus we need into each thing, so that we progress on something, one of our goals, while making sure that the others don't regress. Stagnation on, if you have 5 different goals, stagnating on 3 or even 4 of those goals is perfectly acceptable, if one of them is moving forward. Even if that's only a focus of 3 weeks in a 3-week block. That's how we have to do these things. That's the intelligent way to do these things. This is how you do these things without getting hurt. This is how you do these things without burnout. This is how you do these things without disappointment. You have to accept limitations and work on each thing in the capacity that you know that you are capable of in a realistic manner. Doesn't mean you need to be lazy. It doesn't mean you don't train hard. It doesn't mean you don't work hard towards a goal. But you have to put it in that context. When you're no longer a noob, when you're no longer a noob to the gym, you have to look at it that way. And even then, noobs sometimes try to break off too much at once, and they end up burning out and they stop as well. That's the main reason you have so many people who fail diet and exercise programs and stay morbidly obese. That's one of the biggest reasons. They want too much at once instead of managing their stuff into realistic goals and expectations and taking them one step at a time. They want everything right now. Well, that doesn't work. That's not reality. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.